All right, it's 2:30 here, so we'll probably go ahead and get started. Just want to say hello and thank you to all of you for joining us for this ISMT panel session on increasing trust in peer review through transparency. I'm Jay Suarez, Senior Associate Publisher at the ACS and a co-organizer for this year's ISMT programming for the North American region. I should keep the slide up here real quick. Apologies. There you go. So just a couple of housekeeping items for the session. Our panelists will be taking questions only at the end of the session. Please be sure to use the Q&A function at any point to enter questions. If you'd like to ask a question to a specific speaker, use the & sign and the name of the speaker when entering the question. And of course, would like to take this opportunity to thank our event sponsors, AGA, ACS Publications, Adipon, Cabell's International, Origin Reports, and Scholastica. And to kick us off, we'll start with Sarah Monaco, who is a managing editor of Review Commons, a peer review platform launched by EMBO and ASAP Bio that offers scientists high-quality reviews ready to be submitted to 17 partner journals and or posted on bioRxiv or medRxiv. Before joining EMBO, she received her PhD in molecular oncology from the University of Naples, Federico in Italy, and pursued her postdoctoral research at Heidelberg University in Germany. She worked in the field of immunology and neuroscience and joined EMBO in December of 2019. And Sarah, the stage is all yours.
Hello, thank you. Thank you, everybody. And I am sharing now my presentation. Yep. Can you see it?
Yes.
Very good, very good. Okay, so in this presentation, I will tell you more about Review Commons, on how it works, and also how it relates to the topic of this session, which is increasing trust in peer review through transparency. So Review Commons is primarily a platform that offers peer review of preprints, but is not limited to preprints. So Review Commons tries to create a bridge between the world of preprints and the world of publishing. And so I declare no conflict of interest, and we do that in collaboration with the preprint servers like bioRxiv and medRxiv, and with a consortium of 17 journals that all agreed to respect our policy. So the main goal of Review Commons is to improve the efficiency, the quality, and the transparency of the peer review process. So in terms of efficiency, we want to avoid the need of multiple cycles of peer review of the same manuscript at different journals. And to do that, we have this cross-publisher consortium of journals that all agreed to consider our reviews without starting the process from scratch. In terms of quality, we want our reviews to be focused only on the science, regardless from any possible journal fit. And to do that, we have implemented a journal-agnostic peer review that I'm going to talk into details later. And in terms of transparency, our platform is strictly integrated with preprints, and our authors have the possibility to post their reviews along with their preprints to create a refereed preprint. So we receive manuscripts as direct submission or as preprints. We do have an initial editorial selection, and the manuscripts that pass this selection are assigned to 3 reviewers. So we send the reviews back to the authors without making any decision. And at this point, the authors have the possibility to post their reviews and also their responses to the reviewers on bioRxiv and medRxiv, creating the refereed preprint. So this is the first outcome of Review Commons, which is independent from publication. And you see that, so far the system diverged a bit from the classical route. But we still know that authors want to publish in a journal, and so they also can go back to the traditional system, and they can transfer their reviewed manuscript to one of our journals. And the key feature of Review Commons is that if the first journal rejects the manuscript, the authors can submit it again with the same set of reviews to another journal, and they can do that up to 4 times in our system. Then after revision, hopefully the manuscripts get published in one of our journals, and it is always published with transparent reviews. So Review Commons has 2 different outcomes. One is the classical published paper, and another one is the refereed preprint. And we really want to promote refereed preprints because they have a big value for the scientific community and for the authors themselves. So for the scientific community, refereed preprints mean first acceleration of science, because I mean these peer-reviewed articles reach the scientific community without waiting the long time that of publication. And they also mean open science because they are available for free on a public server. And for the authors, of course, refereed preprints add value and credibility to the preprint because it has been peer-reviewed. It offers the possibility to be scouted by editors and also to get some credits before publication. So this is how our beautiful refereed preprints look like on bioRxiv. So actually they look like preprints. The reviews are a bit hidden. So if you click on these buttons, the reviews appear together with the comments of the authors. Another key feature of Review Commons is the journal agnostic peer review. And this is what makes it possible that these reviews are transferable across journal. So since we know that this concept is still new for reviewers, we have implemented very clear guidelines that are also very transparent and available on our website, in which we give instruction to the reviewers on how to comment on the paper. So first of all, we ask them to evaluate the paper as it is and not as it could be to satisfy a specific standard. So a key point is to comment on how convincing the conclusions are and to suggest new experiments only if they are necessary. And of course, they can also comment on the technical part of the study and the soundness of the data. And we also have this part that we call significance that helps to put the new findings in the bigger context of the existing literature. So we ask the reviewers to comment on which kind of advance the manuscript provides and what is the novelty. And we also have this additional session that we call referees cross-commenting, in which referees can read each other's comment and they can also comment on each other to create a sort of collaborative peer review. So since our peer review is journal agnostic and different journals have different criteria for acceptance, we thought that probably for the authors it will be useful to prepare a revision plan instead of a full revision. And you find here 2 templates that we have prepared for the authors to explain what is the difference between the 2. So unlike a full revision where authors basically perform all the experiments required by the reviewers and they report them in a point-by-point response, the revision plan is articulated as a plan. So the authors describe the experiments that they are going to do to satisfy the reviewers, the experiments that they have already done, or the modification that they have already done to the manuscript, and also the experiments that they are not willing to do because they think it's like out of the scope of the manuscript, or simply they don't have in that moment the time and resources to do that. So with this revision plan, actually the authors can save a lot of time because they can go to the editor, to a journal with like a clear plan, and both the authors and the editors know where they stand. And also in terms like of transparency, I think this is very important. So coming back to the topic of this session, which is increasing trust in peer review through transparency and accountability, this is where Review Commons stands. So first of all, there is our first output, which are refereed preprints that add credibility to preprint, and they are also a great, transparent and open way to do peer review of preprints. So the peer review are not only transparent but also accessible to everybody. And also our journal agnostic peer review is articulated in a transparent way. First of all, I have showed you our very clear guidelines for reviewers, which all the authors can see on our website, so they know exactly how their manuscript is going to be reviewed. There is absolutely no hidden communication between editors and reviewers. Everything is transparent. And the possibility to create a revision plan also opens the door for a direct and open communication between authors and editors. So Review Commons is now running since almost 2 years, and these are some data until September of this year. So we received so far more than 900 manuscripts. We helped with the publication of over 200 manuscripts and 193 refereed preprints. So we send out for peer review 80% of the manuscripts that we receive, and the average number of submission to journal before reaching the right target is 2, even if we offer up to 4 submissions. And what is interesting to notice is that some journals reported that on average, manuscripts coming from Review Commons have higher chances to be accepted compared to manuscripts that are directly submitted to journal. And this it tells us that probably the receiving the reviews before submission helps the authors to also decide what is the better target journal for their manuscript. This is how the published papers are distributed across our publishers. So you can see that they are nicely, evenly distributed across publishers in PLOS, Embo Press, eLife, and also Company of Biologists and the others. And it's also very good to notice that so far all our journals accepted manuscript from Review Commons. And this means that even if the reviews were not tailored to satisfy a specific journal standard, they are still informative enough for the editors to make a decision. So for us, it's also very important to see if Review Commons is accelerating the time to publish and the access to peer-reviewed research. So we measured the time to publish in the classical system and compared it with the Review Commons. So in the purple bar refers to the classical system. And this is, as an example, we have taken data from the Embo Press group. So we measured the time to publish of papers that were submitted to the journals of Embo Press and that were either accepted or rejected by Embo Press. So actually many of them went through multiple cycles of peer review. So every paper corresponds to a dot, and you can see how the distribution looks like. In green, instead, you see data directly derived from Review Commons, and you can see already that it looks like that the time to publish is consistently shorter, and this is already very encouraging. But I also want to drag your attention on the red bar. So the red bar refers to the time of posting refereed preprints, which compared to the other two is very, very short. So this, of course, is totally expected because this does not imply the decision of a journal, but it is still important to notice how quickly peer-reviewed article can reach the scientific community. So we really want to promote the adoption of refereed preprint, and we want to encourage our authors to use them more and more as a research output. So always in our policy of supporting preprints, we have recently introduced a new policy, which is the mandatory posting of preprints at the latest at the moment of submission to a journal. And since we know that the main concern of authors is of posting preprints is the fear of being scooped, in return to this policy, we have managed to have an extended scooping protection for preprints in all our journals. So basically, this means that if a manuscript is under consideration at a journal, and in the meantime, there is another similar manuscript that somehow compromises the novelty, this will not be taken into account to reject the manuscript, starting from the date of posting of the preprint. So this extended scooping protection means that the date that counts is retroactive to the date of posting preprints. So in this way, having a preprint becomes protective towards scooping, and this is not something that the authors have to be afraid of. So for our future, we would like to expand the scope of Review Commons by including new journals, especially in underrepresented fields like immunology, neuroscience, and environmental sciences. We would like to find ways to provide recognition to reviewers because we really appreciate their work, and we are committed to develop new technologies to make these refereed preprints more accessible and easier to read for the audience. So in this respect, I probably can already introduce you a new platform that has been recently launched by EMBO, which is called Early Evidence Base, that aggregates refereed preprints across multiple services. So not only from Review Commons, but also for other similar services for preprint review, like eLife preprint review, peer community, and so on. So in this platform, the authors can easily find preprints and refereed preprints, and we are currently working on it to introduce new functions, so to make the browsing much more easy. So with this, I conclude. I thank you for your attention, and I'm open to answer your question later.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, so much for an informative talk. We do have a couple of questions there in the Q&A. Please keep the questions coming in, and we'll get to them following the next talk, which is by Tim Behrens. Tim is a professor of computational neuroscience at Oxford University and is also a Wellcome Trust Principal Research Fellow. He's the Deputy Director at the Wellcome Center for Integrative Neuroimaging, and he is pretty senior on the editorial board of eLife, holds the Deputy Editor position there. So without any further delay, Tim, the stage is yours.
Hi, I'm just trying to share. Hey, everyone. Thanks for inviting me along. And I think what you're going to hear now is very similar to what you just heard from Sarah at Review Commons. It's really nice to see how ideas are coming together and how different people are contributing ideas to this mission. I'm just going to introduce you briefly to eLife and what we're doing. A lot of it will be very similar to what you just heard from Sarah. So eLife, just for those that don't know, eLife, I was asked to say this. I don't think I have any conflicts of interest. And so eLife is a journal which was set up, I suppose, about 10 years ago now to by these funding bodies who were trying to create disruption in the publishing industry, basically, to create a really high quality journal, but also to create a journal that innovates and tries to find new ways of fairer, more transparent, more author-centric review. And so it started off with these kinds of ambitions. So publish great research. It's run by scientists, so decision-making is all by scientists, but we want to innovate. And we want to, everything we do to influence science publishing broadly, so we create tools and share them with other journals and tools for readers as well. So it started off with this kind of mission, and it went through a phase of some cool innovations. We've always been transparent about our peer reviews. They've always been published for published papers. We've tried to go through peer review innovations which provide clarity and for authors about how they get their papers into eLife through consultative peer review, and by making sure that the reviewers agree on what's necessary to do at the time of the first revision. So very few papers go through more than one round of revision. And we've been big proponents of open data, open code, open access. And there's another part of eLife, which I won't talk to you about now, but it's worth you knowing about, where we are interested in how to create papers that are much more like living documents and with integrated code, and so that really use the internet, the technology for the internet, in order to share, communicate science. So that's what eLife Mark 1 was about, and I suppose that we've made so many big changes recently that it's almost like an attempt to go for eLife Mark 2. So I'm just going to show what we think some of the problems with that model still are. And it's really a similar idea to the idea that Sarah has been telling you about. There are still sort of fundamental problems with the idea in the modern internet age of having gatekeepers telling you when you can and can't publish, rather than having people that evaluate your work transparently and openly after it's published. There's a huge amounts of power in the reviewers and editors' hands. There's enormous time wasted reviewing at multiple journals, taking a long time to publication. Science is just delayed, and the evaluation is really poor at the end of the day. All you get is a journal name, and people will pay huge tens of thousands of dollars to get that journal name because it's good for their career. And so huge weight of almost all the infrastructure of science is based on these strange decisions, arbitrary decisions made by editors at Nature and Science, etc., etc. There's something broken there. So we think that we'd like to innovate in ways that try things that are really radically different now, rather than what we did before. So that's what we're trying to do, and we're going down a very similar route to the route that you just heard, with eLive Mark II, we're going to call it. So we would like to make changes so that we can overcome some of these problems. It doesn't take years to get published. We don't have gatekeepers. Papers aren't just evaluated at one time point, but can be evaluated continuously as we become more aware what contribution they've made. And critically, we want metrics of evaluation that are rich, that try to explain what's good and bad about a paper, not just give you the name of the journal. Okay, here's a bit of background just for people that don't know. I'm sure you guys in this scenario know this, but this is the biggest innovation in publishing, I think, since I've been a scientist. bioRxiv is quite extraordinary. It's publishing huge numbers of papers now. People are publishing before they send their work to journals. medRxiv is starting to explode as well. And we've noticed several things about this. This is one of the things that we've noticed. Something like, this was before we started this new phase, something like 60 to 70% of our papers that we review are already published as a preprint before we review them. So this means that really we are not publishers anymore. That's not our job. The papers are already published when we get involved. So we are curators of this literature, but we're still living in an old world where we have all of the machinery to be a publisher, to be a gatekeeper and a publisher. Which seems wrong, right? And so the question is, how do we change this to meet the demand that is actually at our door, which is to curate this literature. So we're moving to a new world where we exclusively review papers that are already published as preprints, and we actually use the same words that Sarah was using. I don't know whether that's deliberate, but we create these refereed preprints to curate and organize the literature. We're also really interested in teaching reviewers and editors how to do this, right? And this is an experiment. I'm sure Sarah would agree. This is an experiment. We don't yet know how to create really reviews that are useful to be read in the open. We've been publishing reviews for 10 years now, but we've just been publishing the same normal standard review that everybody that you would normally get at a normal journal. But now we'd like to ask reviewers to write different reviews, because they know they're going to be published and read by people. And so we're asking them to do things like concisely state the strengths and weaknesses of papers and those kinds of things. But this is an experiment. We're seeing how it works. And we will hope to learn as a community how to write really effective, useful reviews that are useful for the reader as well as for the author. And then the other thing that we need to do is to make sure the other key stakeholders benefit from this as well. And so the hiring panels and the grant reviewing agencies that no longer have a journal name need concise, useful metrics, but metrics that are much richer than a journal name. And so we're trying to figure out how to make evaluation metrics that are really useful. And lastly, we're working really closely with bioRxiv to work out how to get these things read and displayed. And so this TRIP system that Sarah showed you earlier, which is bioRxiv's way of presenting reviews, that's developed by eLife in collaboration with bioRxiv, and we have other things that I'll show you at the end. Cool. Yeah, this is the TRIP system. Sarah showed you that, so you don't need to see it, but this is what happens. You can, this little toolbar now appears on the top of bioRxiv, which means that we or Review Commons or COVID Alliance, or there are lots of people who are now able to place peer reviews on bioRxiv. And this is how they appear. And like Sarah, we ask our reviewers to summarize in a way that's going to be useful to hiring agencies or to grant panels the overall review. And that's at the moment what we're doing for rich evaluation, but we are going to start implementing other things like badges, and we've got various other ideas which we can go into maybe in the discussion about how to get these concise, rich evaluations of papers. This is the kind of thing that rich evaluation might say. So here's a couple of examples. This study is a tour de force, the major contribution to the field. Or this one says that this study is of broad interest across a diverse range of neuroscience studying sensory system, reward-guided behavior, and interregional interactions. It's a unique, dramatic, and important demonstration of this of XYZ. So it's like trying to explain to your hiring panel something you could stick in your CV just under the paper. Explain to the hiring panel why it's a particularly interesting paper, not just saying I got my Nature paper. So that's a useful thing. And then the last three slides are our last couple of slides are just a bit of an intermediate option. So this is where we'd like to go, and where we're doing this already, but we're aware that our authors, this isn't useful to our authors yet. The hiring agencies don't know what these things are. The people still need the accreditation of a journal publication. So we can't just lose eLife the journal and jump straight into this new world. We still need to have a journal and publish some papers so that the authors don't lose out by sending work to us. And so whilst we're developing this new system, and whilst we're lobbying the HMI, Wellcome Trust, the NIH, and the hiring panels to consider refereed preprints as valuable as papers, in this transitional period, we're going to be basically doing both things at once. And so here's what the rules are at the moment. So we're only reviewing preprint things that are already published. We've already started that. And we have two independent types of output. So one of them is this refereed preprint that I've been describing, and the other one is a published paper just like eLife Mark 1. And so you'll get both things if you submit to eLife. So we are publishing all refereed preprints, even the ones that we reject. But in order to protect authors from the possibility that we've made mistakes and that might prevent them from publishing elsewhere, we're trying to be author-centric, and so we are not publishing the ones that we reject, unless the authors want them published, until the paper is published in a different journal. I guess one thing to note is that when I say we are publishing all of them, that's a big volume. We're really populating a lot of bioRxiv with reviews now. So I mean, we get something like 800 papers a month submitted, of which we review, I don't know, 300 or something. And so they're all getting reviews attached to them on bioRxiv. It'll really create volume in this referee preprint world. And This last thing, I haven't got a slide showing you this yet, but just to point out just how similar the ideas are. We're also creating a platform, and maybe we should talk to Review Commons about this, but we're also creating a platform. Ours is called Society, that curates all of the referee preprints. I think Review Commons stuff is on the Society page, and eLife stuff is on the Review Commons curation page. I've forgotten the name of that, but Sarah will tell you again. But we're also trying to work out, together with bioRxiv actually, what the best way of curating all of the information about a paper is, and how you can display a paper alongside all that information. So like the long-term goal is to have a really beautiful web page where you can consume all of science and its evaluation as a referee preprint at the same time. Maybe we can start having reviews like in line in the preprint, etc., etc. You can imagine all sorts of different fun ideas. And the last thing that I think that is really important, I guess, both for Sarah and for me, is that the community need to understand these things, and they need to know what it's like to referee a preprint and what's being asked of them, and they need to know how to interpret a referee preprint when it's when they see them. And so I guess we're trying to create that community. It's noticeable as editors that reviewers are already getting better at this, just in the 6 months we've been doing it, or 8 months now we've been doing it. And so yeah, that's a big mission of ours as well, to change how the community think about these things. I think that was my 15 minutes done. So that's all I have to say.
Well, that was great. Thanks so much, Tim. And also, again, thanks, Sarah, for some enlightening talks. And we'll go to the Q&A section now. And Sarah, there's a similar theme to the two questions that I posted there. So could you clarify a little bit about time save?
Yeah. So first of all, the first question is like, how long does it take to publish a journal, so a paper in Review Commons compared to the classical route in the journals and the refereed preprints. So there is someone who says that it takes like 69 days for a preprint and 204 days for Review Commons, but these don't have to be summed up, because actually these are like independent data. So this, actually the average of the time to publish, if you compare publishing a journal through the Review Commons system and through to the classical system, this is not like so different. What is different are the outliers. So it's the distribution of the manuscript. So it takes anyway a long time, because there are some steps that cannot be reduced, cannot be shrinked, like the time that the authors need to actually add more experiment, finalize them, that the journals need to go back to the original reviewers, and so on. So these are times that stay as they are. What is avoided is like that if the manuscript is rejected from the first journal, it goes to a second journal and it needs to get fresh reviews. So this is what actually makes the authors waste a lot of time. And I've been in science until 2 years ago, and this is a problem that I know very well, that a manuscript can really be like in review for 2 years if it gets reviewed, but then it gets rejected, and then it gets reviewed again, and this is actually where the time is saved. So actually the time is saved not with the preprints, but it's saved with the avoidance of multiple rounds of peer review. And I think that the second question was related to that as well. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So Tim, actually, one thing I was wondering is if you could comment on the concise, rich evaluations that you were mentioning, going a little bit more into that.
Well, yeah, we don't know. So there's a bunch of ideas floating around, but so there's an interesting question about how much of your evaluation wants to be in text form, and how much of it wants to be in like clear markers that sort of change the the status of a paper somehow, but like we're definitely going to produce badges that say that speak to the how strong the conclusions are, and we'll produce badges that speak to whether the data are open and freely available, and what form they're in, whether they're easily usable. We'll produce badges, I guess, that speak to the impact of the paper, although that's a much harder thing to do. There's ongoing discussions about reviewer scoring, or about community scoring of papers and how you could manage that. That's a complicated issue, but one that we're not rejecting. There's also ongoing discussion about how we can engage other community groups into the public evaluation. Journal clubs that will discuss a paper, a preprint, want to write an evaluation of it, and have that then have that be part of the eLife decision-making process and the eLife evaluation. So we are thinking about like possible future routes include like publicly advertising what we're reviewing, so in case people want to contribute to the review process and summarize their opinion, allowing us to get a much bigger integration of knowledge to summarize in those rich summaries. Those are the kinds of ideas we're playing with. And you can imagine that in this, that like nobody's really thought about few people have really thought about this world, and you can imagine a totally different kind of game than like an editor finding his three mates to review the paper, which is what happens now, versus a much more open, integrative, community-based system. So we're trying to think of what the future might look like there as well.
Fantastic. Actually, related to that, I was just wondering about the more open system. Is there more of a reticence from younger investigators to be involved in this? Are they ever
Which
identified?
way around? As a reviewer or as an editor?
As a reviewer.
So this is an interesting question that I don't know. Maybe Sarah can comment from the review comments. So it's definitely the case that many people do not want their name published as a reviewer. It's also definitely the case that many people don't want their name, the authors, to know who they are. This is a case where openness and transparency, so eLife are not being open or deliberately not being open or transparent with the names of reviewers. In some sense, if we were, it would make us irrelevant. If the review was evaluated on the basis of the name of the author of the review, then why in this new system, why do you need journals at all? Why can't people just put reviewers up, their own reviews up, and some reviewers will be trusted more than others? That system disenfranchises, I think, about between a third and 2/3 somewhere of the whole scientific community. It preferentially disenfranchises women. It preferentially disenfranchises young people, as you say. That in this new system, you're going to need, I think, trusted bodies that will stand for the reviewers, even though the reviewers don't want to share their names. I think it's critical to have that, and Review Commons is doing that, and eLife will do that as well. So we definitely will not be publishing reviewer names with these reviews.
How about you, Sarah? Would you like to comment on that?
I totally agree with Tim. So we have this issue, and now in Review Commons, I mean, since the system is new, and people sometimes and they have doubts and they have questions. So now I offer them the possibility to have phone calls with me after we deliver the reviews, and they are adopted this a lot. So I actually get to talk to a lot of our authors, and this concern, I mean, it comes out. So we have a lot of young group leaders also among our authors. So this is something, so our project is something that, young people like a lot. So we have a big engagement from the youngest part of the scientific community. But they always say...
So that's just to say, that's the same with us. So authors, the young authors love this way more than the oldies do.
Yeah,
I was thinking about the reviewers, and yeah.
No, but the reviewer, I mean, I was getting there. So they always say, I just started my own group. So they still are in the process in which they need a promotion. They need like a tenure or like a permanent position or anything. So I mean, if they review a paper like for like big guys and they want to be critical, they will be afraid to be critical and to be honest, just because maybe these people will be in the panel who decides for the promotion. So it's we have to take this into consideration, absolutely. So I mean, at the moment, we encourage our reviewers to disclose their identity, and some do that, I have to say, but it's not mandatory. So we leave them the choice.
We just don't allow it. Full stop.
Okay.
We think that people doing that will create we think that allowing it creates biases, because some people will be credited more than others for their reviews, and we also think that allowing it lowers the quality of peer review. So we have this strange system where currently, because we're also a journal, reviewers are allowed to reveal their names to authors, and they're allowed to reveal their names in the public letter the letter that is published at the journal site, which is a temporary intermediate thing, because that's a historic thing of eLife. Maybe that will go, but they're not allowed to review to publish their names as part of the refereed preprint. And we think in the long term that it won't be advantageous to anyone to have the names associated with the reviews on refereed preprints. We think that it will make the system less trusted, partly because only if this is the new way that publishing works, only some people will be able to engage in it, and those people will be often doing favors to their friends.
Yeah. I think we have a couple more minutes, and just to continue on that point, I was wondering what would be the fallout for reviewers. Say a paper comes into question, either it be data fabrication or requires retraction or not reproducible. What happens?
That's exactly what that's it's just more honest, this system, right? Because like so currently the system certifies a paper, right? It says this journal believes everything about this paper, right? That's what its job is. And then there's some ridiculous notion that is then the end of it, right? Which of course it isn't. 3 peer reviewers are never going to find everything right and wrong about a paper, and the evaluation of a paper can and does change over time. It might not replicate, or it might some fraud might occur, or just a paper that was thought boring, it turns out was really interesting. Like, all of those things can happen through time, and this system is perfect for that, right? So nobody is certifying this paper. It's all we're doing is saying what we think about it, right? And obviously what we think about it can change, and it's just much more honest than the old system. And we can obviously update what we think about it through time, etc. If something becomes really interesting, we can put a new thing saying eLife's opinion on this paper is that it's one of the most influential ones of the year, or something like that, and we can do that 3 years later. Or if someone wants to retract it, it doesn't need retracting. It's still there in Bar Archive. It can come. eLife can then write a thing saying this is no longer to be trusted because of X, Y, and Z.
Well, fantastic. And thank you for this great discussion. We're basically out of time. So just wanted to thank you all, and hope the audience enjoyed these talks. So the recordings will also be available And you can ping the speakers using the messaging system if you have any further questions. So thank you so much.
It's actually late at night in the UK, so I'm actually going to have some dinner.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Maybe log into the system tomorrow or something.
Okay.
Yeah, cool.
Same
Thanks,
here
Sarah.
in Germany. Ciao.
Yeah.
Bye, Sarah. Bye, Tim.
Ciao.